Hi, I'm Michael McFall from the Hoover Institution. We're sitting here at the Hoover Institution at Stanford University with Milton and Rose Friedman. They wish that they were with you in London for this momentous occasion, but cannot be there. Instead, however, we thought we'd spend a bit of time chatting about the first meeting of the Mont Pelerin Society and what it was like to create this organization.
That was certainly a momentous occasion, very memorable. It's hard now to realize, looking back some more than 50 years, how different the situation was in the world than it is now. Everywhere in the world, all of the emphasis was on central planning, on collectivism. Those few of us who believed in freedom and free markets, in minimum government, were regarded as nuts over on an extreme fringe of the intellectual scene. So far as I personally was concerned, add to that this was my first trip overseas, my first trip out of the United States, and an occasion to meet people whom I have known by name, who were famous, who were renowned economists, political scientists, so that it was a very memorable meeting indeed. And it was a remarkable collection. You have to give Friedrich Hayek full credit for having the idea of organizing a society and for being able to make the physical arrangement to do so. Lionel Robbins was there from England. Mises was not there. Yes, Mises was there. Frank Knight from the United States. You can name any of the names of the, I think there were 35 or 40 people at the first meeting.
One woman.
That's right. One woman from England.
And it wasn't you, Rose. You were in
No,
Nevada,
it was not.
exiled in Nevada.
But I wasn't invited.
It was not a family gathering. It was the woman who was there in her own right, not as a spouse.
Exactly.
So far as I can recall, there were no spouses there, except perhaps from some of the people from Switzerland who were there. At any rate, we met for for about a week, I guess. We had a day or two off for excursions of various kinds. But in the main, we met morning and afternoon and evening and considered what we regarded as the major issues in respect to social organization and maintaining and developing a free society, and decided to organize a society which has grown and prospered ever since.
And over the years, are there particular moments or conferences or debates that stand out in your mind that you would like to share with the folks meeting today?
Well, the first one is certainly the one that stands out clearest in my mind. But there were some other memorable meetings. There was a memorable meeting in, I guess it was at San Moritz in 1972.
That was later, yeah.
Yeah.
I went to that one.
Yeah. Oh, yes, you went to a great
Good not
many
to
of
miss San Moritz. Yes.
And that was a memorable meeting because of an episode that occurred there connected with the assassination of Israelis at the 1972
Of course.
Olympics. And that led to quite a discussion. There were other meetings that were memorable, one in which I recall very clearly in Venezuela, another one in Chile. One of the great things about the society is that it has enabled so many of us to get to know people in other countries of the world who think along the same lines. And some of the most important influence of the Mont Pelerin Society has been in countries other than the leading countries. For example, in Guatemala, where some of the members of the Mont Pelerin Society organized a private university, Francisco Marroquín University, which has become one of the leading universities in Latin America, entirely based on the principles of the Mont Pelerin Society, on free markets and private property. And it's had a very important influence in Latin America.
Well, it sounds like you answered my next question, but when you first met, you were a bunch of outsiders, you said, unpopular views. Today, it doesn't seem that way.
No, it isn't that one.
Can you describe for us the way you look back on the role that the society has played?
Well, there's no doubt in my mind about the role that the society has played. It was a major factor in maintaining a steady stream of influence on ideas. It enabled people who were isolated in their own countries once a year, to at least, to get together with people who felt the same way they did, to be in a situation in which they could discuss issues without worrying that somebody was trying to stick a knife in their back. Right. And it's almost impossible for a person all by himself to maintain and develop his ideas. He could become stuck. But the influence of the society was to broaden the views of people and to give them more ammunition, to encourage them in promoting the ideas. Now, the ideas of the world have changed. It would be wrong to attribute that to the Mont Pelerin Society. It was not. The ideas have changed because of the evidence of facts. They have changed because bigger and bigger government did not mean better and better government, but rather meant a great waste of resources and increasing red tape and inflexibility. It has changed because the experiment of communist China, the experiment of communist Russia, showed that the arguments we were making against collectivism had some merit. And it changed most dramatically because of the fall of the Berlin Wall and the collapse of the Soviet Union. But at the same time, the role that the society played was in providing an alternative set of ideas. Those same events would have happened with or without the society. Right. But it is not at all clear that the outcome on the intellectual climate of opinion would have been the same. Right. Because when you're in a crisis, you only pick up those ideas that are lying around to be picked up.
Exactly right.
That's not a time when you can develop new ideas. And I think that's the role that the society has played.
In terms of filling that vacuum when the moment came.
That's right.
So it sounds like you would say freedom is there's much more freedom in the world today than there was when you first met.
Well, no, go slowly on that.
Okay, yeah, please.
Because you have to, that requires a more sophisticated answer. Taking the world as a whole, there's no question there's more freedom. But that's because of the fall of the Soviet Union and because of the changes that have been occurring in China. Mm-hmm. Those are so large that they dominate.
Right.
But if you go back to the countries that we were concerned with in the 1940s and 50s, it's not nearly so clear. In every one of those countries, government today spends a larger fraction of the nation's income than it did in 1950. From 1950 to 80, in almost every one of those countries, in the United States and Britain and France and Germany, you had what I would call galloping socialism. Government spending was increasing at a rapid rate relative to income. Then from about 1980, 78 in Britain with Thatcher, 80 in the United States with Reagan, you shifted into creeping socialism. Mm-hmm. You still are creeping. Government spending is still increasing as a fraction of income, but at a much slower pace. And hopefully you'll come into a period of declining socialism. We're not there yet. So in the area of the economy, we're less free than we were then. On the other hand, there have been other changes. There have been social changes. There's been deregulation. There's been privatization of enterprises, which has introduced a greater degree of freedom. Mm-hmm. So I find it very hard to make a flat statement for the advanced countries. Right. But for the world as a whole, there's no question at all.
Well, it sounds like the society should return to its focus on the advanced countries. I mean, what you said, we've gone from galloping to creeping, and now it sounds like you'd like to see rollback.
Absolutely.
What are the things that need to happen to begin that process?
There's no question what needs to happen.
I didn't think there was, but I'm sure they'd like to hear from you.
You need to have, and some of it is going on. Note the extent to which worldwide the top marginal income tax rate has gone down sharply. Worldwide, there has been this kind of privatization and deregulation. Those are all to the good. What you've had is a change in the character of government intervention from strict economic intervention in the form of controlling prices and wages, which still is there, but to a lesser extent. It's gone on to social intervention, to intervention about the social intervention into redistribution, aid to disabled, to the enormous concern about pollution. Those are the kinds of regulations you have now. What needs to happen is that you need to have a wider recognition that government, as Reagan was wont to say, is the problem and not the solution. And you need to have laws repealed. Repeal a law a day and you would be in good shape.
And would you say, as the attention in Washington and in this country has turned to the end of the Cold War and now thinking about the Islamic world and the new frontier of promoting liberty there, I'm wondering if you have some thoughts on that as we think about, obviously there are big states and big governments there. Does the society have something to contribute to that new frontier?
I don't believe the society has much to contribute in that area. Individual members of the society obviously do, because our membership encompasses able people in all fields. But in general, of course, war has been the enemy of freedom.
Right.
And so there's a reason to be concerned, I have a great deal of concern about what the possibility of the war on terrorism may mean for human freedom. Before we finish, I would like to say that I am very sorry not to be with my fellow members in London, and I trust that they will have a very interesting and vigorous and extended meeting with lots of differences of opinion and lots of arguments.
Rose, would you like to add anything?
I don't think there's very much to add to this. We're sorry not to be there, but not sorry about making the trip over.
Right. Thank you very much.